Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first seminar in the 2026 HNR seminar series. Hopefully, this will start a long tradition of HNR seminar series. And I welcome Giulia Clarizia as our first speaker. And say a little bit about her. It was also in the email, but still, I'll introduce her. Giulia is a PhD from Roma University and was a postdoctoral research fellow at the Istituto Italiano per Gili Studi Storici in Naples. I'm sure I made so many mistakes in the pronunciation, and is currently a teaching assistant at Roma University. And she's also part of the HNR team as the HNR Community Communications Coordinator. And I'll turn the floor to Giulia when she talks about her ongoing research on the role of business and financial elites in shaping transatlantic relations during the early Cold War. So thank you, Giulia, for opening the seminar.
Thank you, Zeph. Really, I really want this to be a chat among friends, but I really need to start with big thank yous. And the first is for you for having set up all this, and with the extra of being here, even being in a very hard time zone right now, considering that it's very early for you in the morning. So really, thank you. Thank you so much for all the effort you have put into this. And also the second big thank you is for the HNR community in its whole, and for my colleagues in the board, especially the chairs, Martin, Cinderella, and Demi. Thank you so much. And as Zeph was saying, I've been part of the board for more than a year now. Wow, time runs very fast, and it's really my way of giving something back to a community that has given me so much help during my PhD and afterwards, as I will tell you in a second. So really, it's a great community to be part of, with a super positive environment that allows also this type of initiatives, like being easy in sharing ongoing research is actually quite optimistic. And now I'm going to explain you why ongoing actually it's optimistic. Let's say research in pause, maybe. But without further ado, let me share my screen so I can share with you my slides. I don't know why my Mac is doing this thing that it's closing my windows without my permission. I don't know if something is happening to someone of you, but this can also be my topic of discussion later. By the way, let me see if can you see my slides? Okay, perfect. Let me reduce the icons. Okay, so let's start. And as Zeft introduced me very well, I'm an international historian. So this is the perspective that I'm going to adopt today, because it's the perspective that I have in my research that I called so far Finance and Cultural Cold War Networks of Cultural Associationism Across the Atlantic. Actually, this is part of a research path, and I really need to start from there, not to take it too far in time, but because I want to give you a little bit of context of what I am as a researcher, since luckily this time I have time to do that. Everything started with my PhD project, which was called Evolution of Networks of Cooperation between well, it's not the title, but the topic, evolution of networks of cooperation between Italian anti-fascists and US officials from World War II to the early Cold War. And it all started there because it's the first approach that I had to network analysis. And also, I'm glad to share with you that an essay from my PhD research is now published on the Journal of Historical Network Research. So thank you also everyone who took care of the issue of the end of 2025. So if you want to read something about that, I'm there. But this is not only important because of my approach to network analysis and to this community, but also because It's from that research that I found the first connection between the world of finance and business, but mostly finance actually, and the Cultural Cold War. And then I started a new research during my postdoctoral fellowship in Naples that was focused on this, and especially it was focused on two protagonists of Italian finance in the post-war era, which are Alfredo Pizzoni and Raffaele Mattioli. Therefore, I had the chance to work for a couple of years focusing on the connection between finance and transatlantic cultural relations in post-war Italy, with this specific focus on Italy once again. Let's say that this is a project that it's over, meaning that actually my fellowship is over, but the research is not 100%, or at least I would continue forever. It's something that it's not possible, as everybody of you knows perfectly well. So let's say that the part of the publication project is still ongoing. I'm writing, but the archival research should be concluded. I underline should, because I'm not sure about that, but whatever. And since this page is almost closed, more or less, I am starting thinking about the next steps of my research. It's something that I've been doing for quite a while, actually. But now it's really time to wrap up my thoughts and trying to figure out what to do. So let's say that I'm between my previous research step and the future ones. And I really want to keep focusing on the connections between finance and Cultural Cold War, investigating networks of cultural associationism across the Atlantic. And now together we're going to understand what does it mean and how, and especially how network analysis has been helping me shaping my work. And also the idea is with you, having this chat with you, collect some ideas for further potential. So really, I'm really here to listen to what are your thoughts, your doubts, your critics, your questions, but mostly your suggestions. Also, I need to also include this element of personal life, because it's also part of my working life. When we were thinking about the seminar series, I volunteered to break the ice, also because I really need to bring my brain back on my research after maternity leave. I have a 10-month daughter. So this is one of the reasons why my research was a little bit put aside in the last few months. And it's really hard to go back to this. So both for personal reasons, as you can see, but also for working reasons. What is paying my bills from now? It's teaching. And as you can all imagine, teaching plus being a mother plus 1,000 of other things in my life doesn't really leave a lot of space for research. But I want this to be just temporary. So I really needed to take this chance to start thinking about my research again. And it's a very good occasion to do it with you. So let's start from my research questions. What am I looking at? What I'm trying to understand? So my core research question is how finance and business elite worked within and beyond traditional diplomatic channels to build transatlantic relations in the early Cold War. So the time span I'm focusing on is more or less between 1945 and 1960. And one of the first answers that I was able to give to this question is that cultural initiatives played a huge role into creating this connection, into shaping the role of finance and business elite and international relations. And it's something that at the first place surprised me, because I was not automatically connecting the world of finance and business with culture. But actually, if you look at what happened, even at just at a superficial level, you realize that the involvement of the financial and business elite into cultural initiatives is huge. What do I mean with cultural initiatives? Cultural associations, so associations that were meant to build relations, cultural relations between the two sides of the Atlantics. It could be specifically between Italy and the United States, but also more transnational, as I will highlight shortly, but also editorial projects. So the idea of using publications to spread certain values, education projects, more or less for the same goal. And so I really want to go a little bit deeper into studying this phenomenon. Plus, I also have another research question, which is a little bit more conceptual, and it's related to historiography. So I'm wondering how accurate is the paradigm of the Cultural Cold War to read and understand such initiatives. For sure, cultural Cold War in general, Cold War history in general, it's one of my main reference points, as you can see here in my historiographical background. But what I'm wondering is is it enough to explain the initiatives I'm studying? And probably the answer is no. It's yes, in part. So this is one of the main conceptual points that I'm trying to raise. But focusing a little bit more on my historiographical background, I have for sure international and transnational history as a reference, plus transatlantic relations history, once again, especially with a focus on US and Italy relation. And once again, cultural Cold War and Cold War history is probably the main historiographical cauldron where I would put my research if I have to choose, not one. I am assuming that everyone is familiar with the concept of cultural Cold War, but I don't want to give that for granted because I don't know who I'm talking with. Actually, I know some of you knows me, but I'm not sure that this is clear for everyone. Maybe you're studying something completely different. So just to be 100% on the same page when I talk about cultural Cold War, I'm talking about the use of cultural strategies in the ideological struggle between the West and the East during the Cold War. And it concerned the fields of art, literature, media, cinema, educational exchanges, actually everything that you can think about related with culture. It's very, very broad. And it's also very, very broad in terms of the actors behind the initiatives that might fall under the umbrella of the Cultural Cold War, because they came both from the United States and its Western allies, and they came both from governments and the private sector. In fact, one of the most interesting points in the introduction of this book that I I pasted here in the slide, The Cultural Cold War in Western Europe, is that we see the creation of these state-private networks of cooperation, which is very, very interesting to dig into, and this is part of what I'm trying to do with my research also. I want to skip 1 second forward just to show you this, just to bring some elements of silliness in this conversation. I wanted to give some color to the slide, so I asked ChatGPT to draw me an image of the Cultural Cold War and Europe in between of the two superpowers. And what I had as an output, it's very interesting because it shows this Europe that is completely confused by the two pointing hands of the two superpowers. And well, with my research, not just with mine, this is something that was already done before me and just trying to continue this historiographical path. This is something that it's overcame because we know now that the European allied played a huge role in this type of initiatives. That were also both overt and covert. Once again, it's not just the hidden hand shadowing culture over Europe. This is part of the reality, of course. There were some covert initiatives that are part of what we can call cultural Cold War, but this would be absolutely too simplistic to believe. That it would be too simplistic to believe that this is 100% the reality. There were also overt initiatives or something in between, some gray zones over there. The reality of the cultural Cold War is much more complex than what has been believed for decades, but I would say that in the last 20, 25 years, historiography has been doing a lot towards exploring this complexity. So the focus on cultural associationism, it's a good example, it's a good way to investigate European agency in shaping transatlantic relations. And once again, this is what I'm trying to do with my research. But now let's arrive to the fun part, at least for everyone here. The reason why we're all here together talking about my research is because we have something in common. And this something in common is the approach of historical network analysis. And so I just want to share with you how historical network analysis has been shaping my research so far. And one of the main points is actually conceptual. It's really shaping the way I am looking at my sources, and I am formulating my research question. And I wanted to be romantic in bringing to you this metaphor of the constellation, that it's very, very appropriate actually to understand the Cultural Cold War. Because if you look at the countless initiatives that fall under the umbrella of the Cultural Cold War, you get lost in this sky of stars that are maybe shiny but pointless if you look at them one by one. But if you place them in relation to one another, then you give to these initiatives historical meaning. So this is already, I think, something that arrived to my mind because of network analysis, because of historical network analysis. Probably if I haven't had my path into this, I wouldn't arrive to this conclusion relating to what I'm doing right now. So this is probably the main aspect. But then we have also, and yes, and this is how I transform the constellation into my graph. Maybe some of you have seen it already back in 2024 in Lausanne, because this is the graph I brought to the conference in 2024. And as I told you, my research also knew a stop, knew a break. So I haven't gone much far from that. But now I'm showing you something a little bit different, but the idea behind this graph is the same. What are we looking at? Let me describe it to you 1 second. Maybe I will put this, okay, maybe it's better this way. So do you see my pointer moving around the slides?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So if I point something, you know what I'm talking about. Great. So basically what you're looking at, it's an attempt to look at an image of a portion, of course, of cultural associationism, of a cultural associationism network between 1949 and 1951. My first disclaimer here is that this material has been collected from my previous research. So it has not been driven by the exact research question I am taking into account right now. It's something similar, but not the same, which is an issue, of course. But it's also the reason why this is just a starting point. But the reason why I think this is interesting is that even just with my new research question, even if I looked at the sources I already had in my personal archive, not from previous researches, I had something interesting to work on and to use once again as a starting point to think about what I can do, with these ideas in the future of my research. So what are we looking at? We have, I didn't write down explanations because I knew I was supposed to talk with you about this. So we have in yellow cultural associations that were aimed at building transatlantic relations, or specifically between Italy and the United States, or in general in their activities, in their goals. This is the American-Italian Association that was founded in Rome in 1949. This is the American-Italy Society, something very similar to the American-Italian Association, but founded in the United States. So this bilateral cultural association with the aim of building relations between Italy and the US. Then we have 3 sections of this think tank. I'm not even sure this is the correct name, association. I will understand which is the exact name of this very weird and interesting structure that was a word brotherhood. That was basically, yes, a think tank, a sort of cultural association structured both in sections within countries. So we have here the Italian section and the American section, the United States section, and the international section, so something broader. And plus the Rockefeller Foundation and the Council for Foreign Relations. So the reason why you are looking at this selection, it's because they were related to my previous research. So they were associations that were connected with the activity of Pizzoni, of Mattioli, the other Italian banker I was looking at, and also to the activities of Island Dulles. That is, you probably know him as the CIA director from 1953 to 1961. And he was a great friend, actually, of my Italian protagonist, Alfredo Pizzoni. So they were really involved in cultural Cold War-related associations and activities. So this is something old, but still it's something that can tell you something about what I want to do next. I also want to show you, so basically in yellow you have the associations. In blue you have individuals, and the individuals that are here are part of the boards of the associations or people who funded the association. So they basically wanted to support the associations with money. So I stopped at this sort of superficial level of involvement. I could go deeper with that. This is the first thought that I want to put on the table to discuss with you. I could go deeper. I could also consider broadening a lot the graph, the people who, for example, attended to the activities of these associations within a certain time frame. That could be interesting. But so far, I haven't done that yet. What I've also done is labeling to isolate and to highlight the names who are part of more than one association. So all the ones that are labeled means that are part of at least two of the associations in yellow. And the reason why I wanted to do this, it's basically isolating what we can call a network of transatlantic cultural associations, assuming that those who were more involved quantitatively in more than one associations were also the most active in these types of activity and context, which is also problematic because it's not written in stone that this is true. For example, one of my protagonists, who was Raffaele Mattioli, in this selection of association is not there. So quantification is never enough in history. We know that. I'm well aware of that. That's the reason why we need both. No, we need qualitative history, but quantifications can help in this case. So I also wanted to bring with you this problematic element because it's something I'm thinking about. No. So but by the way, I'm trying to reconstruct these networks, starting from the most involved names. Let me look at my notes if I'm forgetting something that I wanted to tell you. So the idea is to understanding who is in this network. I am assuming that finance and business had an important impact in that. And I can see that because I know some of the names that are labeled. What I really wanted to do for this presentation, but also in general, I want to do that for my research, is starting to working on this, giving some attributes related to the background of these names. So allowing also you to see the connection that I see because I know the names, but you cannot. But between my intentions and the time that I have to work on stuff, there's an ocean. So this is something that I really didn't have the time, but I want you to know that this is one of the intentions, one of the projects. But just to give you an idea, here, Valletta, Pirelli, and Olivetti, for those who are familiar with Italian history, are huge names into the business sector, huge names. Then once again, we have Pizzoni, very important bankers, but also moving to the American side, Aldrich, it's a huge name in the American finance environment, as well as McKittrick, McCloy. We have the Dulles brothers involved in the business sector before arriving into politics as CIA director and Secretary of State. So huge names. We also have a huge name for what concerns the history of European integration. We have Paul Hermes Pack, that was part of the World Brotherhood International sector, and he also cooperated with the Council for Foreign Relations. So there is a lot here that deserves to be further explored. And I think that this way of isolating the network, the core of the network, can be a way to make things feasible, no, and having actually a starting point. But I really want to wait to count the weight of finance and business sector into this because of my research question. Now I want to understand how finance and business sectors were involved into these cultural activities, why, with with which purposes, etc., etc. So I really want to be precise in quantifying this. I think it can be useful to have a clear picture of what was going on. So this is one of my easy next step. And I also want to show you very quickly the background, the backside of this. Now I want to give you to have a look with you to how I'm working in terms of collecting data. So this is a graph that I elaborated with Gephi. And behind that, I had this nice Excel, not really nice, actually, very simple, but useful. I have my notes sheet, which is very simple so far. I just have the names and basically I'm trying to understand if they were people or entities. So I don't know, associations or business, etc. But what you can see here is that I'm slowly starting to try also to give a background to these names, and this is really the next step. As far as I have data, because I cannot always find biographies or information about what these names were actually doing, but in most cases I can, and this is something I'm really interested in. And then I have my edges sheet. Once again, it's very simple. I have the sources are my individuals and the targets are my associations. I have the date that is generally a year because since I'm considering those who participated into boards or in financing association, it's generally something that happened year by year. So this is very clean, luckily, and most importantly, I have the source from which I'm taking this information that is generally a record that witness who were part of the board. That can be or an official paper of the association, or even, when you have the official piece of paper that was used to write letters to, for example, those to ask money to people, or to invite people to participate to the activities of the associations, etc. And generally on the side, I didn't prepare a picture, but I'm describing it to you. On the side, you have the list of the names of the board of a certain associations, etc. I'm using that a lot also to grab this information. And so we have this result. And now, in these last couple of minutes, what to do with this? I have already introduced a couple of ideas. I want to go a little bit deeper in characterizing this network, that it's really at the first step so far. But I also want to frame it for real in my new research questions, which are broader than the one I had before. So I really want to broaden the selection of associations. I have an idea. I really need to insert here the Council for Cultural Freedom. I don't know if someone of you is familiar with these experiences, but it's one of the biggest related to the study of the Cultural Cold War so far. So I think that it could be useful to introduce that element, also to have a sort of reference point that's already been studied. But where to go, in which directions to go? I have two ideas. The first is keep focusing on US-Italian relations, but doing this broadening in terms of associations included, and also expanding the level of the network. So adding also people who were participants to the activities, not necessarily part of the board, because they were still part of the network in their way. This is one idea. The other idea of broadening the picture, and I cannot help but underline that when it comes to broadening pictures, it's always complex, complicated. But I think that with network analysis, this becomes feasible. When we deal with a lot of data, putting them into a network, it's always a good idea to find some order into complexity. So the second idea is give the research a transnational turn. And I think that this is probably the most interesting one, because of the nature of these associations that were mostly transnational, or at least they had this transnational goal of creating a transatlantic community that obviously did not include just Italy and the United States, excluding the rest of Western Europe. It's, I mean, I would like to include the rest of Western Europe into this, of course, keeping the focus the most narrow as possible. But still, it's something of the picture is missing. It's there in the background, but I cannot grasp the deep meaning of these experiences, in my opinion, if I don't get their transatlantic, transnational nature completely. And how to do that? It's huge, no? Once again, the stars, full of 1,000 stars. How to find an order into that? So my idea is to keep focusing on this word brotherhood experience, which is very peculiar. I don't know if anybody of you have ever heard about the word brotherhood besides listening to me talking about that. It's a very understudied experience. Actually, it's not studied at all, I think. Just very quickly to give you a sense of what that was, and then I will leave the space for your comments. The word brotherhood was this think tank associations founded in 1950 at the initiative of the U.S. National Conference for Christian and Jewish. And it was structured, as I said, in national sections. So they had they had sections in various countries in Europe and North America, and actually even more globally later. And Italy was part of these states. And it was formed by elites from the world of finance, business, intelligence, with this goal, super rhetorical, of promoting understanding, justice, friendship, cooperation among the people beyond the differences in religions, races, culture. Very rhetorical. But if you look a little bit at the goals, for example, of the single promoters, individuals that actually were working to put this in reality, they were very political. So for the Italians, the organization was a tool for promoting the Italian image to the US partners. So let's say a way to show your prestige. In the United States, there were huge anti-communist purposes, very, very explicit anti-communist purposes. Even if they operated, for example, with the realization of documentaries, they operated creating school material. So the activities were very cultural at the basis. So I think that there's a word to explore here. I've just looked a little bit at the Italian section and at the American section, but I could include some other countries like France or Germany, for example, to expand a little bit this network. And it's feasible because I have a starting point. The starting point is the board of this specific organization. So it's somehow narrow to start the research. Why am I not doing that so far? Because I don't have money to do that. I don't have a research fellowship so far. So I'm also selling this if you want to buy it. I'm looking for a new research home. Where stop sharing. Okay. But without further kidding, thank you so much for listening. And I will be really, really happy to hear about your comments, questions, whatever you have to share.
So we have 3 more minutes, and I'd like to ask you a question which could probably fill a whole book or a series of books. But it connects to this whole series. When you think of how network analysis, how does it inform you in your research? Do you think of it as a conceptual framework that you change or you decide on your research projects because you're thinking networks? Or is it an illustrative, visual way of summarizing your own project? Because, okay, it's a network, so I'll draw a network and then everything's more schematically organized. Or is it a quantitative method of analyzing, interpreting through numbers? So where do you place yourself, or maybe something entirely different?
That's a lovely question, and I hope that you prepared that for all the seminar series, so you can ask that at the end of every seminar, because it's amazing. If you haven't thought about that, do it. But I'm sure that you prepared that for that purpose. Uh, Well, the three of them are there, of course. Uh, the third, like the quantitative element, is probably the least strong in my own research. I'm very qualitative actually in my way of thinking. So, and also for the nature of my research, the quantitative element is always secondary, not completely absent, but secondary, I would say. The illustrative aspect, it's useful to me, but the most important one is the first, it's the conceptual framework. I'm not even sure that at the maybe this part of the research, yes. But for example, think about my second step of research of the three I showed you at the beginning, no, my research about these two Italian bankers. I had this conceptual framework of network analysis behind that. I'm not sure that a graph will be in the output of this research. Probably not. But it was still huge to me to reason in terms of networks. I don't know if it makes sense. So yes, the conceptual framework, it's very relevant to me.
Great. So thank you so much. Thank you for
Thank you.
opening the series. And I hope to see all of you in the next series. Thank HNR for hosting us, for giving this opportunity to create this community. And thank you again.